Hello guys, this video is going to show you how to do the outlining, inking, and shading of your haunted house project using pen and ink techniques that we have already talked about in our formative practice assignment. The first part of this video will cover me outlining our project here, so you'll see me finish up all the outline and then we will move on to the shading portion. So you will notice that I'm adding certain details and omitting others. If you look up at the reference image in the top right section of the video, you'll see that while this is not a direct copy of the reference that I used, the spirit of it is still there, and it's going to be beneficial to you to kind of simplify certain shapes. Don't get every single little detail in there, but use what you see as inspiration for the details that you do include. And also, be sure to think about where you can add some of the haunted house elements that you're looking for. You'll notice that I have a little ghost in the window, and I also made the house look a little bit older by adding missing bricks, putting some chunks out of certain areas, and just in general, not using a ruler is going to make the house look a little bit more organic, run down, and like it's sagging. So that's a really good idea if you want to try to make this look a little bit more illustrative and not too realistic. So here I want you to notice some of the other little elements that I did include to make my house a full, complete composition. I included a moon in the background, I did some bats, I added a spooky tree, and some evil looking bushes. And that's really all that you need. You can really have a lot of freedom here to make this look creepy and make it look a little bit more haunted and abandoned. In this section, I'm going to start to demonstrate how to do shading up at this top steeple of the house. And things that you're going to want to think about here are the different shading techniques that we have, which are stipple, cell shading, cross-hatching, and scribble. Remember that you can choose to do other ones as well, but these are the ones that I'm going to be looking for when I'm grading your final piece, and they should give you pretty good coverage with all of the different textures that you might find on a house. In general, I would say that using cross-hatching is going to be really good for getting nice dark areas, as I'm doing here. This little eave of the house is kind of behind slightly, so it should look fairly dark. So at this point you'll notice that I've used two shading techniques and I'm working on cell shading in the windows. In general, trying to use cell shading for glass is a good idea because when you see reflections on glass, generally they're in solid shapes and they can even block what you see behind the glass. So it's going to give it that kind of glassy look without a lot of effort on your part. You'll also notice that I did some stippling, which is a little bit more tedious, but it is really good for texture as you're working. And then finally, I am just going to add a little bit of a background texture just all over the face of this steeple portion here, just to give it a little bit of differentiation in tone. And from here on, I'm going to continue to finish the outlining portion of this assignment, so I will be going around and finalizing certain lines, erasing other ones, and deciding in general where I want things to be before I go in and shade the entire piece. The one thing that I want to mention here is that you'll notice that I made all of the windows that are in the triangular portions of the house the same. This isn't something that you actually see in the reference image, however, it really helps to make the entire thing look a little bit more cohesive, and like each piece goes together. So that is something that you can choose to do to deviate from your own reference, and kind of go your own way to make this a little bit more personal, as well as perhaps simpler for the rendering process. You'll also see here that I did a completely different plan for the roof. Rather than doing the scallop shingles, I just go for some straight lines, which I do like actually. I think it looks pretty good in the end. So at this point I have mostly finished my line art and I'm about to get ready to start to do all of the shading. I'm just finishing up this little tree in the background and then we are going to get into it. Before that can happen, however, you are going to want to erase all of your extra pencil lines so that you have a nice clean palette to kind of work with here. You probably will have some extra lines from the sketching process, so it's going to be a good idea to get rid of some of those. So this ends up being my favorite part of doing this process. Using all of your different shading techniques to get the final result that you're looking for is really fun, and you have a lot of freedom to kind of pick and choose which textures you want to do in order to get certain effects on your house. For example, you'll see that I did some scribble for the bushes, which really helps them look leafy. And in order to make them look three-dimensional, I just had more scribble closer together, down at the bottom where it would be closer to the ground, and then a little bit less at the top where it would be catching some of the moonlight from the big moon up there. You'll also see that I did stippling and scribble for the little cobblestone path there. And you'll notice that by getting the scribbles pretty close together, I got a lot of good contrast in there. And then here I messed up and I wasn't recording a portion of the house, so you'll miss some of that stuff, but all of the screen windows I just did cross-hatching fairly close together so that it looks like a black screen. I added some simple brick texture and then did a combination of stippling, cross-hatching, hatching, and cell shading to kind of make it look finished. And so here we also have our friendly skeleton in the window waving, because this is a friendly haunted house, of course. So for the final stage of this drawing, I did decide to include a black background to make it look like the dead of night. This is something that you can do with a black marker or a Sharpie. I ended up just using a black paint marker that works pretty well for this. However, you can see that the tip is kind of blunt, so it was a little bit scary trying to get into details. I accommodated for that by just not going all the way to the edge of my drawing and leaving a little bit of a white border, which I think was pretty successful overall. Adding this section of just pure black to your backgrounds or in certain areas of your house is really going to make the rest of your drawing pop, because it gives what the darkest tone would be some room to breathe, kind of, right? So it's going to be there contrasting against every other tone that you've managed to create using your pen shading techniques. So it's really a nice final step, and then if it seems like certain parts of your drawing are kind of washed out or not contrasted enough, you can always go back and adjust. So that's going to be about it for this video. I just finished up with the background, and then any kind of touch-ups that I need to do I'll go back and work on. But overall, I really enjoyed this process. I thought it was a pretty fun project, so hopefully you guys are going to be enjoying it as well. If you have questions, if you need help, let me know. And this will be your final summative assignment for term 1, so make sure that you are getting it done and turning it in on time.